Hey, yo, Sox fans, welcome into season 7, episode 9 of the Sox On Tap podcast. I'm your host tonight, NWI Steve, filling in for Antonio, who is taking a little sabbatical here this evening, enjoying his Father's Day. Joined here on the mic by my guy, Bez Beyond the Pen. We've got a lot of things to kind of get into here today to talk about this, pretty painful 1-5 road trip into the heart of Texas. That's our good old baseball team that we love, the Chicago White Sox, took us on here this week. Before we get into that, as always, folks, be sure to go to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Bez, my guy, how's your Father's Day today?
Steven, good to see you. Father's Day was good, man. I can't complain. We had some festivities here at the house. I got my gifts from the kids. I got my breakfast and got to sleep in, which is key when you have 3 kids. So all good on my end.
When you say sleep in, what does that look like? What are we talking
about? That's about 8:30 for me.
Wow.
Yeah. It's it even gets kind of hard. Like if I wanted to sleep later than that, I don't think I could. I don't think my body would even allow it.
Wow, that's that is definitely sleeping in my world right there. So wow, more power to you, my friend. So for all the dads out there listening here, hope you had yourself a nice Father's Day. I spent some time over today with mine here, lamenting about this shitty baseball team and various other things here. So hopefully everybody was able to go and spend some time with their dads today if they were able to do so. But we're gonna dig into this thing right now here. This was a little bit of a painful week for our Chicago White Sox. We knew it was going to be a little bit of a challenge going deep into the heart of Texas, playing the first place Houston Astros and the suddenly resurgent Texas Rangers. I know coming into the week, I thought that they were going to go 1-5 on this road trip. I did not think that one win would come in the very first game of the road trip against the Houston Astros. I thought they were more likely to get swept by that team, given how well they were playing, and I thought they would steal one in Arlington against the Rangers, and that was not the case. Bez, I think you have them going 2-4 for this one?
I had them going 2-4. I was hoping for the mantra of 2025 of don't get swept.
Yeah.
Which, if you win 2 out of 6, that still kind of counts as not swept, but no such luck. Definitely a couple that got away.
Yeah. I know our buddy Antonio, not sure what exactly he was thinking. He somehow thought they were going to go 3-3 on this road trip.
He regretted that as soon as he said it. Right.
He
I don't feel good about that.
Yeah. And obviously in hindsight, he probably would like to have that one back, but I think we kind of knew going into it that just wasn't a very good prediction on the part of our pal Antonio here. So after this conclusion of this series here against the Rangers, now the Sox are 7-31 on the road this year, the worst record on the road in all of the major leagues, and really carrying over from some of the disastrous play we saw a year ago here. We've seen positive signs for this team, particularly playing at home, and I'm going to kind of dig into some things here later on here. And just there's a stark contrast in some of the splits that are taking place for some of the individual players and for the team themselves here on the road. I don't know if, maybe they're not bringing the eye pitch machine on the road. I know that was a big joke that, Ozzy and some people used to have on the interwebs a couple of years ago here, but something clearly is not going well for this team when they get on that, poor show plane that Tommy Pham famously had some thoughts about, a year ago. And when they get outside of Chicago, they just don't hit. And, in 6 games this week, they were outscored 26-15.
Mm-hmm.
And that differential was obviously very skewed by that 10-2 loss they had to the Astros. I believe it was on Tuesday, or excuse me, on Wednesday of this past week here. Other than that, they were playing close games, and that kind of seems to be something, Besnick, that people seem to be happy about, the fact that they're not getting blown out consistently from that. But man, just watching some of these games this week, it's just really hard when you're just not scoring runs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really hard when And here's the fun stat for everybody. In 6 games on the road, this team struck out 77 times. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not talking shit. I'm not exaggerating. They struck out 77 times. Okay? This is not a good offense. They are not close. Okay? They can't score runs. Their pitching is improved. I like seeing some stuff from the pitching staff. But they struggle to score runs because there's no power in this lineup. And when you have to consistently string together walks and hits, runs are going to be hard to come by. So I don't know. I mean, there is no fix in sight. This is the team as it is. The prospects you have are here with Colson Montgomery maybe coming up at some point. They're not making moves at the deadline to pick up bats. This is just who they are. This is who they are. And hopefully they just continue to play well at home. They have a near 500 record at home, and that's kind of what's keeping this thing afloat. Right now, they're on pace for about 52 wins, which is about what I expected. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too upset about the outcome. I don't know why people are expecting more than what we're getting right now. We've gotten a modicum of fun with a whole lot of just a team that just doesn't have enough talent. It's not a Will Venable issue. It's not an accountability issue. Trying harder and bringing more fire and passion isn't going to move the needle or make Andrew Benintendi slug 500. So this is it. This is what we've got to work with for the rest of the year.
You know, you bring up a couple of interesting points right there on the offensive side of it. I was not aware how ghastly those strikeout numbers were. We were talking before we hopped on here. This team is now averaging 2.84 runs per game on the road this year. I'm not a mathematician. I didn't get a math degree from, the university that is the B1G's best basketball program and the best in the Midwest, Purdue University. 2.84 runs per game seems not good to me. They've hit 23 home runs in 38 road games. It's very hard to win and very hard to sustain any kind of momentum from game to game, even like you said, when you are just completely devoid of power. And you talk about needing to try harder and Venable needing to light fires under these guys here. I don't really know what he's supposed to do. We were joking about this again before we hopped on here. I remember back when I was a scrub junior college pitcher, and we would go on our spring trip to Texas in Galveston, just right outside of Houston there. We used to have curfews every night. And the legendary coach, Stephen J. Ruzich, who's going to be having the field named after him at South Suburban College this coming September here, used to famously put tape outside of your door when curfew would come in, and he would be the first person up in the morning. He'd be checking the hotel, and if that tape was broke, you were getting up and you were having to run on the beach right outside the Gulf at 5 a.m., which was not an enjoyable thing from what I hear. I never had to take part of that, but I knew some guys who did. So I don't know. Maybe that's what Will Venable has to do here for this team to get them to start playing better with more intensity on the road. Maybe he needs to institute a curfew or something here. I mean, if that's what we're talking about here as a fan base right now, we got some real problems on our hands here.
People are really grasping at straws. I mean, they got a little taste of success where, we have these offensive explosions and score 8 or 9 runs and blow teams out. And it gives you a glimpse of like, wow, this is what this team could be. This is when we play well, this is what it looks like. This team is fun bad. This team is kind of close. I've seen people say, we just need a couple bats and a couple of arms and we'll be relevant again. And it's like, I want them to be, guys. I really do. I don't want to hate on this team, but that's just where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think the series on the road really do kind of show the fact that while there has been incremental improvement here, there is still just such a tremendous way for this team to go here before they return even to relevancy at this point here. And, for all the hoopla about Kyle Teal last week and the nice weekend he had after his major league call up in that 3-game set against the Kansas City Royals, he had a pretty tough week this week down in Texas. We were texting about this in the group chat about, John Schriffen had mentioned on the broadcast today that in his last 13 games, Chase Maedroth is hitting over 300, and it just didn't feel like that. And you kind of brought out some of the statistical data about this road trip in particular here. And I think that's almost to be expected with some of these young guys here, to kind of see some of the ups and downs that are going to go with it. Yeah. Maedroth now has, just a little bit over 200 career major league plate appearances. Like, it's not unreasonable to think that he's going to have struggles that he's going to have to go through. And Kyle Teal is going to go through the same things. Edgar Carroll put together a pretty nice week, still not hitting for power, but still at least having good at bats, having a good sound plate approach. And I think that's one of the positive takeaways that can be gleaned from what we've seen with the young players to this point, even if the production level hasn't ultimately been where we want it to be.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, you're going to see a lot of ups and downs. And I mean, when you have so few hitters in this lineup that can produce, when one of them isn't, it's pretty obvious, at least to me. And it's all to be expected. Like I said, this year isn't about winning. 50 to 55 wins is about what I expected. It's about development, and it's about trading veterans and accumulating assets for the future. This is a team that's playing for 2027 or 2028. So, we're punting this season and probably punting next season. Although, you'll probably see some incremental improvement if prospects come along. But yeah, I mean, Maedroth had a rough series. Teal is he's gonna need time to figure it out. Teal just got here. The only real consistency we've seen is on the starting pitching side with like Shane Smith, Davis Martin, and Cannon and Burke have had their ups and downs, but overall they've been pretty good. And we've got a new face. We've got another Milwaukee Brewer, 2 new Milwaukee Brewers in like the last week.
Yeah. That's something we're going to dig into a little bit here, because that was an interesting move that I don't think anybody really anticipated happening. I know last week when we were on these airways, we were kind of talking about the Andrew Vaughn situation and discussing, and I had said that I thought Andrew Vaughn would be back up at some point. Not that I was pining for it, but I did not anticipate the end of the Andrew Vaughn experience happening here this week. So we're going to dig into that a little bit later on here. So a couple of things that I think need to be expanded on a little bit from this Texas Ranger series here over the course of this weekend here. I don't know how much we really need to dig into the series against the Houston Astros. Obviously, Shane Smith threw the ball pretty well for this team in the victory that they were able to get on this road trip. Sean Burke got bombed out pretty bad. Which, look, that's going to happen for, a young pitcher. Sometimes you're just going to go out there and it's just not going to be your day. Some days you're going to be the bug and not the windshield, and that's just kind of what it was. And then you have a bunch of close games that, unfortunately, bad teams find ways to lose.
Yep.
We've talked about some of the interesting things with Will Venable and some of the managerial decisions, questionable things that kind of are symbolic of a first-year manager, I would say. We had a very unique and interesting one this past Saturday when Edgar Carroll was on first base late in the game in the situation, and Venable decided to empty his bench and pinch run for Edgar Carroll, ultimately allowed the team to tie the game, but they then had to forfeit their DH spot as Kyle Teal then had to go behind the plate to some of the catching position. That left Tyler Alexander hitting in the number 3 spot in the order. And that was something that would come into play as this game went into extra innings there, unfortunately. in his at bat, Alexander actually did put the bat on the ball and did ground out to first. So he did have a little bit of a better at bat in the circumstance when he came up versus Mike Talkman and Chase Mydroth, two guys that have swung the bat decent over the last couple of weeks here. So Alexander didn't, make a fool of himself. He was the first Sox pitcher to get in the batter's box since Dylan Cease in 2021 there. Bezic, what were your thoughts as you were seeing this whole thing kind of unfold and kind of realizing that, and this is something Venable does a lot where he will just empty the bench. What were you thinking as this was going on?
He loves to pinch hit. He kind of seems beholden to righty lefty matchups. For the most part, maybe he's looking at some other splits that I'm not thinking of when these matchups come into play. So I'm not surprised that he did it. The thing that I keep going back to is Edgar Caro's not very fleet of foot. And is Edgar Caro going to, I'm sure he would have advanced to second base on the ground out, but is he going to score from second on that single? Because Brooks Baldwin, who's actually got some pretty solid speed, beat that throw by a little bit. He didn't, there wasn't a tag or anything like that. It wasn't that close. But I don't know that I think Caro probably gets thrown out at home there. And if you don't get that run in, then, the game's over. They're down by one. It's the eighth. I mean, they'd have another at bat, or maybe he gets held at third and you got two shots to get him home. But yeah, it's hard to defend losing the DH and having a pitcher bat third. But on the other hand, I'll admit I'm kind of torn. Because I'm not, if you don't pinch run for him there, are we all up in arms that he didn't pinch run?
And that's kind of what Venable had talked about in his post-game presser was basically saying that he knew that they had to kind of empty the tank and that put them in a position to actually tie the game right there. And I think this just kind of comes back to some of the roster construction issues. And I know Ozzy had a lot of thoughts on this on the postgame show with Charles, just talking about, using both of the catchers in the same game. Ozzy is not a particularly big fan of it. And this is why, again, I was honestly surprised when they sent Corey Lee down. Was it 7 or 10 days ago when that decision was ultimately made. Now, it is pretty rare for teams to carry 3 catchers, but it kind of begs the question, if you have a manager that does like to use and does want to have both of these young catchers in the lineup to be able to maximize and help them get at bats as much as possible here to help their growth process here as rookies at the major league level, would it make sense to have a third catcher on the roster? I don't know how much you're really forfeiting by doing that. And even, you could theoretically play Corey Lee at first base a little bit there. You're not getting a ton of production at the first base position unless Miguel Vargas is playing over there. So there's just some really weird roster machinations that are taking place here. But, that decision, like you said, I think there are definitely 2 schools of thought with that. And like you said, the idea that if you don't pinch run for Carroll there in that spot and use Brooks Baldwin, is it all a moot point anyway? So, right. And also say this, I think Tyler Alexander needs to be commended for holding things together the way that he did. Because obviously he had that at bat and then he had to go back out there and pitch it. He got them out of another inning, and the Sox had chances with the ghost runner bullshit in the 10th inning and, trying to be able to scratch a run across, and they couldn't do it. So I give Alexander a lot of credit for going back out there in that position after having to have that at bat, being put in a bad position ultimately, and still giving this team a chance to win. So that was a very bizarre scenario that took place on Saturday. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if we see it happen again, because again, Venable said in the postgame that he wouldn't hesitate to do this if the situation warranted. He is definitely sticking to his guns with his decisions that he is making, whether it's using both of the catchers in the lineup together or situations of playing the infield in. He is holding to his convictions on that, whether we agree with them or not. That's going to be a point of conjecture here, I think, going forward over the course of the next 80 plus games of the season here. So
yeah,
the other kind of interesting thing that took place here in this Texas Rangers series, Venable getting ejected in the first inning here today. Bez, you had a very astute observation about this.
So I loved it. I love that he went out there and got into that ump's face. I forget who it was, but the umping, on check swings, balls and strikes, they were horrendous in Arlington this whole weekend on both sides, for both teams. You could say based on that it's a wash, but we saw some horrible ones. And he got tossed. And as you know, today's Father's Day. And he got tossed last month, which was his first career ejection as a manager on Mother's Day. So he is making his rounds on Hallmark holidays to get rung. And I'm not sure which one's coming up next, but that's the one to kind of look out for.
I think the next Hallmark holiday would probably be Sweetest Day. I feel like he's not going to have to worry about an ejection on that one.
No. Okay. I don't even know when Sweetest Day is. Are you a big Sweetest Day guy?
I'm not, but it's usually in late October.
He won't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
That'll be Aaron Boone or someone like that.
So
the other thing, one other thing is there were some people saying that Venable should have played some small ball there in those extra innings and maybe bunted the ghost runner over. I didn't take any issue with that. I'm okay with them trying to play for more than one run in both situations. The only real hang up I had about that game was not intentionally walking Adolis Garcia with 2 outs and runners on second and third when you have Jonah Heim batting behind him, who's also a righty. So you weren't getting lefty no matter what. I'd rather face the other guy. And, maybe the outcome's a little different there. I don't know. But that was my main grief with that, with the way he managed the end of that game. So I just wanted to put that out there before we moved on.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a pretty fair point because obviously if you load the bases there, you set up the force play anywhere. And, Garcia has started to heat up a little bit here in the month of June. I think they talked about it on the broadcast today. He was hitting 316 here this month. What? So, he's kind of getting going there a little bit. So I think, probably may have been a better decision there to maybe attack Jonah Heim there in that situation instead of Adolis Garcia. But, such is life. Like I said, 1-5 road trip for this team here, unfortunately, taking them to 7-31 on the year. Road trip kind of went as expected from my perspective on this. Wish it could have gone a little bit better. But again, when you have a team with the talent deficiency that this team does have, you find ways to lose close games in particular. And that's just kind of what it's going to be for the remainder of this year. As you mentioned, Bez, there's not really going to be reinforcements coming to try to help this thing out down the road here, especially in the second half. So that's going to kind of wrap it up for the on-the-field action. We had some interesting things happen off the field here this week that we alluded to earlier. Former number 3 overall pick in the 2019 draft. And whatever you do, if you are listening to this broadcast, do not under any circumstances go back and look at the first round of the 2019 draft because you will want to vomit when you see some of the players that were taken after the Sox selected Andrew Vaughn at number 3. And you'll also be very nauseous about the fact that, the 2008 White Sox lost 100 games, and the team that lost 104 and picked right ahead of them got Robert Witt II, the newest, deadliest Sox killer that we are going to have to deal with for the next decade plus here. So don't go back and look at that first round of the draft, whatever you do. But Andrew Vaughn, is no longer a member of the Chicago White Sox. The era is over. He was shipped up to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Aaron Savali, who got the start this afternoon for the Sox in the finale against the Texas Rangers. Bez, you were talking a lot over the last week or two about the fact that a lot of the young pitchers on the Sox are approaching innings maximums that they've had throughout the course of their careers. And we've got some of them that are coming back off of injuries, and they're going to have to kind of manage the workload for these starters a little bit. And you were pretty spot on saying that you felt like they needed to find a veteran arm somewhere to just eat innings to get them and carry them through the rest of the season. And Aaron Savali is that guy. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to pick up a pitcher here. I thought they would do it via the scrap heap and not not a trade. I didn't expect the Andrew Vaughn trade to happen. And it's really bizarre to say that because he's terrible. One, the White Sox have been holding on to dear life to this guy, hoping that he'd turn it around and provide some type of trade value for this deadline. But they clearly realized finally that it's not going to happen and shipped him out. Savali comes to us with, I think, about 160 innings pitched last year. So, he got demoted to the bullpen because they called up their all-world pitching prospect, Jacob Mizorowski, and requested a trade. So your wish was granted. You came to the worst team in the American League, buddy. But yeah, I'll take it. Vaughn Gone Summer is here. Aaron Savali is in. And you've got Davis Martin, for example, who's had 144 innings as his career high, and that was in 2019. He's coming off of Tommy John. He pitched 80 innings last year. So, and he's already at, he's at 80 innings, and he's career high besides that 144 is 88. So this is a guy coming off of Tommy John. Then you have Shane Smith, a rookie. His career high is 94 innings pitched. He's already at 68 and a third. So you're going to have to manage this with these guys. You already have Jonathan Cannon on the IL. You're probably not going to get Martin Perez back. As we saw with Sean Burke, it's kind of a wild card every time he goes out there. He's another pitch to contact guy. Adrian Hauser, I don't know how much longer this run is going to last. And he's looked good and he's been a nice pickup. But this makes a lot of sense. And they've even said, I don't remember if it was Getz or Venable that said that a 6-man rotation is on the table. So it makes a ton of sense to do this. They've had all those Tommy John injuries in the minor leagues, guys like Drew Thorpe and Mason Adams, who were counted on to pick up innings to get through the season and develop as starting pitchers. So that's not going to happen. So, that's why you've seen Adrian Hauser come in. That's why you've got Aaron Savali now, because there really isn't anyone else in AAA. Nick Nestrini's not getting it done. Jairo Iriarte is not getting it done. They did promote Noah Schultz to AAA. I don't know how much we need to get into that, but I like the move. I did see something in your guy, hashtag confirmed, Robert Nightingale's column saying that the White Sox are looking to flip Savali at the deadline for a mid-tier prospect, which I don't know that anyone's going to want Aaron Savali in a month and a half. I feel like we probably need him more than whatever low-end prospect we're going to get. So that one was confusing, but otherwise, I'm good with this deal.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for the points that you mentioned there, particularly when it comes to trying to manage the workload for the young pitchers. And I think that's where the injury to Martin Perez really hurts quite a bit this year, because that's something that he was being counted on heavily for. And it's kind of interesting, this little pipeline that is existing now between the Sox and the Brewers. You look at the Sox taking Shane Smith with the first pick in the Rule 5 draft, bringing in Adrian Hauser, a guy that spent some time up in Milwaukee, Tyler Alexander, bringing him in, and then you get Savali now. I'm going to put the tinfoil hat on here for a second here, because the Brewers actually threw cash into this deal to also get Andrew Vaughn. What does Walker McKinnon have on the Milwaukee Brewers right now that he was able to get cash considerations for this and an actual live breathing major league starting pitcher for Andrew Vaughn?
I don't know. I was trying to look at this deal from the Brewers' perspective. You can maybe change Vaughn's usage in some type of platoon situation and hope that he can get you back to like a 100-ish WRC plus and be league average as a result. They're currently paying Rhys Hoskins like $17 million a year, and he's been not good, not much better than Andrew Vaughn was in like 2022 and 2023. So I think this is just them trying to replace him next year, potentially. You can even offer Vaughn $1 million and ahead of the non-tender deadline. And if you do so, you gain another year of arbitration. So there might be playing some money ball here. I think that's what's going on. But Savali wanted out. He had no value whatsoever. I think he was even called a clubhouse cancer by some people. So he wanted out, and he has no value as a result, and wasn't really pitching very well either. So yeah, I mean, maybe McKinnon has some damning pictures of, I forget who their GM is, because I know the one that I did know went to the Mets.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time drawing the name of their current GM at this point myself here. But this deal really is fascinating, and I think for the closure of the Andrew Vaughn era, something that I wrote earlier on in the week here after this deal took place, just tremendous disappointment and not living up to expectations, I think, is going to be the lasting memory of Andrew Vaughn. I mean, this was somebody that you took with the number 3 overall pick, and if you're going to take a right, athletically challenged, vertically challenged, first base only guy, you better be sure that he's going to mash. And that was one of the points of contention at the time that he was drafted. I'm old enough to remember the big debate about, do you take him or do you take CJ Abrams? That used to be the hot topic. But then again, you can look at all the other picks that were made after Vaughn, and there are multiple all-stars that were selected in that first round of 2019 after Vaughn. Just complete disappointment. People thought that he was going to be the next in line of great White Sox offensive first baseman, and he never even came close to that. So just disappointment all around. I mean, is there anything else that you really can think of that would describe the Andrew Vaughn experience in a White Sox uniform, Bez?
No, I was going to just add that he, to me, is the biggest disappointment from the previous core of Rebuild 2.0. Because you look at his career FWAR and it's negative. We weren't thrilled with the results from Eloy or Moncada or even Luis Robert, but you at least got something out of those guys. You had some years that were pretty solid. Michael Kopech, you got some that year out of the bullpen in 21 and some decent starts here and there. But to me, it's Vaughn. He's the biggest disappointment out of that whole core. That's a number 3 overall pick. You whiffed big time with, like you said, all those guys that went after him. And had you just lost a few more games, you'd be in a better situation right now. But yeah, I mean, massive disappointment, and a guy who, honestly, with all the first baseman DH types on the roster, he should have probably been the guy that they traded. I know hindsight is 2020, but there were some people out there in the White Sox Twitterverse who were suggesting trading him a couple of years ago because of that reason. So they missed the opportunity to do that, obviously. And yeah, it's disappointment. That's all it comes down to, Steven.
Yeah, and it's fascinating now that I think Luis Robert Jr. is the last man standing from Rebuild 2.0.
Yep, the last one from the last division winner, 4 years, and that's it. Yeah, and he's starting to come around a little bit. I know he got scratched today for some thumb soreness, but the numbers and he's gotten a hit in every single game that he's come back since his Ryan Fuller tune-up. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. But with the trade deadline just 6 weeks away, I don't know how much he's going to improve his value. But yeah, that's it. I'm glad we finally moved on, though. I'll say that. I'm glad that we finally moved on from all of these guys, except, and Robert probably happening soon.
Yeah. And I think with Vaughn in particular, I think we were all kind of in agreement that had we been the ones making the decisions, I mean, that would have been a non-tender over the course of the winter. So not going to have to worry about that situation again here going forward. So it's nice to kind of be able to put that whole situation in the rearview mirror at this point. And, it really would be nice at some point here to see if this team could just have some power at that first base position. Because, man, the last 4 seasons here, and, people forget, second half 2022, Jose Abreu was not slugging. So that used to be the position that you could always count on when you were looking at someone in a White Sox uniform to be able to produce power. So we're going on more than a few years here at this point of lackluster production here. So hopefully that is something that gets turned around in relatively short order here. So going along with that was obviously the biggest roster move of the week. We did have a couple of other things happen here. Joshua Palacios, kind of a hot button issue within the fan base got DFA'd here this week. And, we always kind of would joke in the group text that seemingly every Sox manager has one really shitty player that they will just always have in the lineup, and the game always seems to find that player. And Palacios kind of was that guy here the first 70 plus games for Will Venable. So he is gone now. Tim Elko was sent back down to Charlotte here. His second foray at the big league level did not go well. Not a lot of contact happening there, and which is kind of par for the course with what we saw from him all across minor league levels for him. And that was always one of the biggest concerns with him, the bat to ball skills. So this team brings in Ryan Noda, who got starts at first base over the last 2 days here from the Oakland A's. And they brought Brooks Baldwin back. And, he unfortunately had a couple of really pivotal at bats this week. He had one in a game down in Houston on Thursday, and then had a couple more here over the weekend against the Rangers. Had opportunities to do some damage and at least move some runners along, or hit a sac fly. And Ozzie was pretty hot at him on a couple of the post game shows here. So Brooks Baldwin is back. Hopefully this weekend isn't a sign of things to come here in this second go around for him during the 2025 season. So this is kind of where the roster is at right now. Lenyn Sosa is on rehab assignment down in Charlotte. So I wouldn't be shocked personally if we see him back relatively soon, maybe taking Josh Rojas's place, even though Rojas, had I think 1 or 2 hits here today. But by and large, the offense has not been particularly good from him. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if Lenyn kind of takes his spot when that comes up. But, this is kind of what we have from a roster standpoint.
I don't, they picked up Rojas on a major league deal. I looked this up. He doesn't have any options. So they can't send him down. And they paid him $3.5 million, and he's about 35 games into his White Sox career. So if I know my chairman, he's not going to want to cut bait on $3.5 million after 35 games. So I'm kind of thinking that Baldwin probably goes back down for Lenyn Sosa. And as sort of disappointing as it is, Lenyn is actually a better hitter than Baldwin. Not that he's great by any means; he's barely average, I think. But I think that's probably what we'll see. And I think they want Baldwin to be an outfielder. If you look down at his game logs in Charlotte, he's playing center field almost daily. So yeah, something else to keep your eye on there. We haven't seen the last of Brooks Baldwin, but what we've seen hasn't looked good.
Yeah, he's kind of raising the question here. Maybe this is just a quad A player, and that was always going to kind of be the risk there. I mean, this is a guy that was a 12th round pick.
Right.
A couple of years ago. The fact that he even made it to the major leagues is a win from a development standpoint in some, circumstances. But the production here at the major league level has not been particularly good. So that is a very good point there about Lenyn and with the option situation here. So I think you probably are right from that standpoint. Is we probably will see Baldwin then go back down to Charlotte, put back up his 1200 OPS down there in the little ballpark there in uptown Charlotte. And then, he'll just kind of play the waiting game here until somebody else has an injury and has to spend a little bit of time on the IL, or if a veteran gets moved at some point here. Maybe if Mike Tauchman, continues to swing the bat well, he's a guy that you could probably see moved at the trade deadline here. So maybe that will be Baldwin's path back to 35th and Shields when Lenyn Sosa comes back.
Agreed.
So that kind of breaks down the moves off the field for the week. So Sox are returning home this coming Tuesday, where they are 16-18 on the season, playing a much better brand of baseball than what we see from them on the road. Coming in and going to be playing against the St. Louis Cardinals. So I will be fascinated to hear from anybody at the ballpark, because there's fans of a certain fan base or a certain team that love to go to Sox games during the week and wear their colors and cheer against the Sox. I'm curious to see what these people are going to do this week with the Cardinals coming in. How are they going to handle that?
I don't know. If they want to win a division, they're going to need our help.
I mean, granted, the Cardinals thing is pretty much done at this point. They're 37-35. I think they're 7 games out of first place in the division. They're 3 or 3.5 games out of the wild card. But coming into the season, John Mozeliak in his final year as the team president for the Cardinals was kind of basically saying they were wanting to take a little bit of a step back and retool things a little bit, and they got off to that unexpectedly hot start, which would have made the trade deadline in 6 weeks a little more complicated for them here, but they're really coming back down to earth. I did not think very much of this team coming into the season here. They're hitting the skids. I think they've lost 7 or 8 out of their last 10. So, 3-game set here on Tuesday. Shane Smith is going to be back on the mound taking on Matthew Liberatore. So lefty for the Cardinals there. Wednesday will be Sonny Gray taking on Sean Burke, hoping for a nice bounce back performance from Burke in that one. And then in the finale on Thursday afternoon, the return of Eric Fetty. Coming back to the corner of 35th and Shields, will be taking on Adrian Hauser. Fetty, who, of course, was with the Sox a year ago and was really the centerpiece in one of the first major deals that Chris Getz made, that 3-team deal famously with the Los Angeles Dodgers that sent Michael Kopech out to LA as well. And in return, that's the deal that brought Miguel Vargas here to the corner of 35th and Shields. So going to be a little bit interesting to see what happens. Just a little less than a year since that deal took place. Who knows? Maybe Vargas takes Fetty deep on Thursday afternoon. Bez, what are you looking for in this series here this week?
Hopefully Vargas taking Fetty deep. That'd be fantastic. But I'm hoping that a lefty at home is something to help this offense. We've got Shane Smith on the mound in that game, right? So that's a game that I'm expecting, or I should never say expecting to win with this team. I take that back. But I like our chances there against a lefty at home with Shane Smith on the mound. It's one of the few things to look forward to. But like you said, they've lost like 6 of their last 7. They just dropped 3 or 4 to the Brewers. So they're struggling, but the White Sox are kind of the get right team. You saw them get swept by the Orioles, and then the Orioles go on a little bit of a winning streak there before falling sort of back apart. So I am hoping, I don't think we'll get swept, and I'm hoping that we win 2 out of 3 here. I haven't looked it up, but just gut feeling, I feel like Sonny Gray used to own us with the Twins. I haven't looked up the numbers, but that's an old AL Central foe that hopefully we can get the best of. But I feel like he used to. It's a different cast of characters now, anyways. Though, right?
Yeah, it is obviously a different group comprising the Sox roster right now than in the past. And like you said there, I'm not really up to date on the Sonny Gray career splits against the Sox right there, but it wouldn't surprise me if he is one of those guys that when he was with the Twins, did go out and pitch well against the Sox there for the couple of years he was playing for those shitheads from Canada South. So it would be nice to see this team win a series, get 2 out of 3. I think they'll get 1. I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if it is that game on Tuesday night with Shane Smith on the mound. I feel like that probably is this team's best chance to get a victory here. So, as we talk about all the time, the 2025 White Sox just don't get swept.
Just don't get swept.
They weren't able to make that happen this weekend, so hopefully they get back on track here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at home against the St. Louis Cardinals. So
and then we go north of the border to Canada for 3 games against
a suddenly resurgent Toronto Blue Jays team.
Yeah, they're playing a lot better right now. I think they're in good position in like the second wild card spot. And we don't play well on the road, so the week ahead is another one that is not looking good. Not that any of them ever do, but hopefully they can surprise us. We'll see.
Yeah, it would certainly be. Well, although 2 weeks ago, we did kind of go into that homestand when they had the Tigers and the Royals coming in there. I thought that they would go 1-6 on that homestand there, especially given how poorly they had played against the Central over the course of the last few years. And they surprised us. They went 4-3. Could have easily gone 5-2 on that. Yeah. So you never know what can happen. I would certainly welcome it if this team would find a way to go and win 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals here this week at home. But like you said, I don't have a very good feeling about what's going to happen up in Toronto at Skydome. That place has been a house of horrors for a number of years now for this team. So next weekend could be potentially really, really ugly. But we will see what happens here. So, Bez, about 48 minutes into this thing, you got any final thoughts for us here? What we've seen this last week of riveting White Sox baseball?
I don't think we're going to see anything much different. And hopefully we can do some things like obviously picking up Savale to cover some of these innings and just protect these young arms through the rest of the season, because I feel like we're going to get pretty close soon to a lot of these young starters hitting a wall with the amount of innings that they've pitched. And that's really what's propped up this team's record. Let's be honest. It's not the offense that's getting it done. It's the pitching. So hoping that we find the lightning in a bottle here with Hauser, with Savale, maybe even another pickup to kind of prop things up, because I really have a bad feeling that the bottom could fall out there. Otherwise, we're going to see more of the same, baby.
As the world turns in White Sox baseball here in the year of our Lord, 2025. Well, that is going to wrap it up for us here on the Sox on Tap podcast. Bez, pleasure as always for everybody. Thanks for tuning in here tonight. And be sure to go to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. We'll be back with you at some point here, maybe next weekend. Who knows? But hey, here's hoping that we see a little bit better play from the Chicago White Sox this upcoming week. At least find a way to win a series at home against the Cardinals. That'd be nice. Thanks for tuning in. As always, folks, Let's take it home, Bez. White Sox forever.
White Sox forever.